his arrival, Chivers and Vermont Academy would win more skiing championships than any other school in the state.
My philosophy was that in order for a skier to reach his full potential, he needed to have an exposure to all 4 events. Those 4 events being cross-country, jumping, downhill, and slalom.
People were still skiing on just hickory flat-top skis with no edges.
It was quite a wonderful experience to learn how to ski that way. The first pair of steel edges that I got were not new skis, but were old skis that a woodworker ground off the edges and installed steel edges on.
Mount Mansfield had a lift, and that was about the only one around here. A chairlift, I mean. The others were rope toes.
It was as much of a thrill going up as coming down. I mean, it was like taking your life in your hands, especially as a young kid. Of course, one whole side of your clothes were all worn out, and your mittens were all tattered, and we had leather patches sewn into our arms of our ski parkers just because they'd get worn out from trying to grab on.
Vermont was soon dotted with small, family-oriented community ski hills.
The ski toes began popping up like popcorn.
That's where I learned how to ski. My favorite place was the old Underhill Ski Bowl.
Underhill Ski Bowl. You would take the kids out in the morning. They had a very, very primitive type of snack bar there and unheated bathrooms so that when you went in and you froze.
We didn't have all these expensive ski clothes because the skiing industry had just started. It wasn't unusual to see some kid that had just his ordinary work clothes on, skiing, and probably skiing pretty well, too.
A lot of these poor kids that loved to ski couldn't afford to, pay the $1 a day. And so the operators would put them to work, and then they got to ski for free.
Soon Vermont's small rope tow operators just couldn't keep up with skiing's growing appeal.
And Woodstock, when all these people invaded it, there was no place for them to stay, and there was no place for them to eat. They even rented in the jail, charged them 50 cents a night to sleep in the hayloft.
As skiing shifted into high gear in the late 40s, out-of-state developers began turning locally owned land into winter resorts. Just as small ski hills had dotted the landscape, a new generation of ski mountains suddenly materialized. Bromley, Pico, and Stowe became household names for downstaters and even a few locals hungry for the Vermont skiing experience.
My wife would pick me up, and I would get into my ski togs in the back seat while she drove. In Waterbury, I'd start driving, and she'd get her boots on, and so we're all ready to go the instant we arrived at Stowe.
One day I went skiing. The weather was atrocious, but I know I wanted to get away from the governor's job for a few hours. And when I got off the lift at the top, a farmer was helping skiers get off. He looked at me and he said, Governor, I thought that must be you. There ain't another damn fool in Vermont would go skiing on a day like this.
Of course, there were other more sobering uses for mountaintops than skiing, like early warning radar facilities, for instance. A darker side of the 1950s was mounting national fear over the threat of surprise nuclear attack.
This nation may be attacked by an enemy armed with atomic or hydrogen bombs.
People really and truly had a fear.
The biggest scare that the Russians gave us was when they put up Sputnik. Boom, all of a sudden, here's this thing going around the world that the Russians put up, and if they can make it go around the world, they can let it come down anywhere.
The country was universally a little edgy. There was an Air Force base here as well as in Plattsburgh at the time, and so that, we were aware of it.
And by the way, do you know exactly what your family would do if an attack came? Say at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's a good question, isn't it?
I was going to rent a house, and the fellow said, come on down in the basement, I'll show you one of the best features that we've got. And I went down in the basement of this house, and there's a fully stocked bomb shelter down there.
One of your best protections is an outdoor underground shelter covered with at least 3 feet of earth.
Build yourself a cellar a bomb shelter.
Brother Arthur put in a bomb shelter, and I got the cement blocks to put mine in, and I said, Art, can I come and stay with you if I bring the food and something to drink? And he said, okay. So I never finished my bomb shelter.
You sat under your desk. Yeah, I do remember sitting under my desk and not really believing that it wasn't going to happen either.
WMVT, telecasting on Channel 3 from the top of Vermont, begins its first day of programming in the service of the people of Vermont, our neighbors in New York State and New Hampshire, and our friends in Canada.
Another unbelievable aspect of post-war technology, this one peaceful, was the 1954 arrival of television in Vermont.